Hey, Motorman here. And you know, there's a little bit of a controversy about handlebar steering versus counter steering or push steering. Well, let me say, I understand physics and how it works. You're always counter steering a two-wheeled vehicle. However, at low speeds, you're consciously turning those handlebars and turning them pretty far to make tight low-speed turns, as in some of the exercises you'll see in my classes and on my video. Now, the reason I separated it into two different things is because it's less confusing. Let's make it simple. I believe in keeping everything as simple as possible. So I call speeds under 15, I call that handlebar steering, because you are consciously turning those handlebars and the bike is not going to do what you want it to do or go where you want it to go if you don't turn those handlebars. Now, I'm going to show you a little video of me doing some stuff one-handed to prove to you that yes, you're counter steering even at 2 or 3 or 5 miles per hour. However, that's neither here nor there. I only break it down into two separate things because it makes it simpler, and I believe in keeping everything simple. No reason to complicate what's not really complicated. Now, at higher speeds, you understand, and if you've ever rounded a turn at 50 or 60 miles an hour, you counter steered, probably didn't even realize you were doing that. But that's okay. When it comes to doing it quickly in an emergency situation, when somebody gets in your way and you have to quickly swerve, that's where people have the problem. So that's what I'm going to go over today, and I'm going to show you some easy ways to practice your counter steering. Let's go. So here's an easy way to practice your swerving. Set up 5 or 6 cones in a straight line 30 feet apart and start at 20 miles per hour. You want to get the motorcycle weaving through while you're push steering or counter steering. I like to call it push steering because that's what you're actually doing. Push forward on the left grip, the bike will lean left and go left. Push forward on the right grip, it leans right and goes right. If you've ever rounded a turn at 50 or 60 miles an hour, even a big wide sweeper, you counter steered or push steered without even realizing it. It is instinctual. When it's not instinctual is when you have to do it quickly or in an emergency situation. And that's why we practice this particular exercise. It's one of the last things we do in my class after they've done all the handlebar steering and made that front tire turn almost lock to lock in some of the exercises. But as you can see here, if that front tire is barely turning, it doesn't take much of a push to get that bike to react. If you've got a sport bike, it takes even less pressure to get the bike to react. The lighter the bike, generally, the easier this is going to be. Not to say that it takes a lot of strength to do this. As you can see, these two tiny women have no problem doing it. And that's all they're doing is pushing forward on one of the grips to make the motorcycle go in the direction they want it to go. Now, this is a low-speed exercise, and this is why I call it handlebar steering, because you can actually see those handlebars being turned from side to side. They're still counter steering, but it doesn't matter what you call it. I like to say at low speeds handlebar steering, and you could actually see that front tire turning when you turn those handlebars. That's something you don't even notice at higher speeds, and anything above 15 or 20, you could barely, if you were standing straight in front of the motorcycle, you could barely see that front tire turning, and it only turns for a split second. In essence, what it does when you push forward on one of the grips is it forces the motorcycle to lean, and at higher speeds, that is the only way to make a motorcycle turn, is by forcing it to lean. Now let's watch this rider going through the cones at about 20 miles per hour. He's got that dip going. He's pushing on those bars aggressively. Now this next rider, who hasn't even thought about counter steering, but he knows he's got to weave through these cones, so his instincts will tell him what to do, but just not very well. He's barely making that motorcycle dip as he goes through the cones and almost hitting them. That's why you should practice this. Now the second time through, this rider gets a little bit more aggressive, but pushing the bars a little bit harder. And you can see it's a little bit better. The more you do it, the better you get. This rider's aggressively pushing the bars. And as you can see, the bike is swerving out of the way of the cones. Now let's watch the tentative rider again. Now this is probably a third or fourth time through. I don't remember if I filmed every one of them. But he starts to get a little bit more aggressive. And the swerves are better. As I've said, if you never practice this, and the first time you have to do it out on the street, you're not going to be aggressively pushing on those bars, and it could cause you to hit whatever it is you're trying to avoid. The only way to overcome that is practice.